What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and so I am here today making this video. I got a few things to go over. I got some articles I want to go through for some context and perspective, and also obviously a little bit of data as well. But they're mostly perspective articles, but I like to give you full context, full perspective. I got some tweets and other stuff I want to talk about, some injury news as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get right into it. I'm gonna start with a couple articles. First, the first two articles, they're short, come from Sports Illustrated. And this first one is by Jake Mendel. The title is Brian Flores stands with Daniel Kilgore, wants to win. The Miami Dolphins want to win football games. You may not believe it, but it is true. In reality, the Dolphins were never going to win many games, but suddenly the players have become annoyed with the low bar set by the fans. First of all, before I continue, okay. Right, everybody, obviously players want to win games, right? Their careers are on the line, their lives are on the line, their paychecks are on the line every single game. Obviously that's the case. And at least theoretically speaking, of course the coaches want to win games as well. However, like when they say, you may not believe it, but it is true. In reality, the Dolphins were never going to win many games. But why? Why was that the reality? Why is the reality that they were never going to win many games? The reason is because despite the fact that they say, the coaching staff, right, and the front office, because the responsibility lies from Stephen Ross on down to Brian Flores. So Stephen Ross, Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Brian Flores have responsibility for building this team. And with the purges that they did and the talent and leadership and production and experience that they got rid of and the way that they built this team, that's why this team was not going to, in reality, win very many games. Because of the actions that they took. So it doesn't matter what they say. They can say it all day long until they're blue in the face. The reality is the reality because of the actions that they took. So they designed this team to be bad. Maybe they weren't necessarily going for historically bad, but they're certainly succeeding in that because the one thing that they set out to do, they are succeeding at. And very well. And it's unfortunate, but let's continue. Anyway, and so, but I can see how the players would get annoyed by, all these fans that want to lose and stuff. That does make sense. It irritates me too. I don't want to lose. Just because I recognize the reality doesn't mean I want us to lose. I want us to win games, but I recognize that we won't because of how this team was built by this organization. Kilgore's comments shouldn't be surprise to anyone. Kilgore made some comments about it, about how he's not happy with it and so on and so forth. I get it. These players are paid to win football games, and that is what they want to do. No team wants to be known as the worst in the league. When asked about Kilgore's comments during Thursday's press conference, Brian Flores gave a pretty straightforward answer to what he wants to do. And then real quick, there's a tweet by Safid Dean. Dolphins coach Brian Flores supports Captain Daniel Kilgore's "I don't give a damn about the number one pick" comments, says it's standard operating procedure for every player in the league to want to win each week. Real quick, I didn't actually see the framing of Brian Flores' response to that. And, I mean, frankly, it could have just been some bullshit like, oh yeah, I support that or whatever. Not really saying, explicitly that he doesn't give a shit about the number one pick, right? Because it's pretty clear that they are trying to be as bad as possible for that number one pick so they can get a quarterback, right? But, I mean, again, for sure the players, don't give a fuck about the picks, right? They don't care about the picks or the cap space. They care about cap space so they can get contracts. Well, they know, oh, well, you got plenty of money, so pay me, right? That's what they care about when it comes to that. They don't care about the picks because it doesn't have anything to do with them, right? And what they have done right now is put these players and the fans through impending disaster and losses. Anyway, no coach wants to lead a team to 0-16, and no player wants to lose by 20 plus points every week. Look, I mean, see, that's why, like, under the current circumstances, I certainly don't think any of the players, and we'll get more into this in a little bit when we talk about, like, their on-field motivations, are they really bought in, and so on and so forth, but, no player wants to lose by 20 points and to go 0-16 and shit like that, for sure. No player wants to be the worst, because that hurts their career. That hurts them down the road, right? For potentially ending up on another team if this team can't get it right. And let's, real quick side note, also remember again, the one team in the NFL, all the other examples of tanking teams that anybody ever uses is from the NBA and the MLB, baseball, which those sports are way different for so many different reasons, including far less violent of a sport. But anyway, so the one example in the NFL is the Browns, and they're struggling pretty hard despite all of that talent, and they're still, again, years away from even being able to claim that they have any success at all, let alone sustained success. So, we don't have any NFL examples of it working to this date, like truly working, a full tank job, truly working out in the long run. So, of course the players don't want. Now, theoretically, again, the coaches don't either. But when you have information and reports about how Stephen Ross asked Adam Gase to tank this year specifically to go get a quarterback, also keeping into context that the Minka Fitzpatrick pick, when we took him in the first round, Stephen Ross did not like that pick. He wanted to get a quarterback in the first round. He was not satisfied with that. So, and obviously he left it alone for then, but then he fired Adam Gase. Right, so Adam Gase was fired in part because of things that he didn't have control over, and because he refused to tank specifically for a quarterback. And so then Brian Flores comes in and clearly acquiesced to Stephen Ross's demands. So, theoretically coaches don't want to lose, but clearly he doesn't really give a shit about it. Because not only did he agree, not only did he tell Stephen Ross, yeah, you want me to tank this year? Okay, no problem. Not only did he do that, but he went all in on it. And literally, him and this front office have made this team historically bad. Anyway, let's continue on, though. There is a divide developing between the players and fan base. What is missed throughout this debate is that both sides want the Miami Dolphins to be good, if not a great football team. Sure. And so that is one, credit to everybody that I will give, no matter who you are, fan, player, coach, whoever, everybody sure maybe at heart wants us to win. It's about the approach and what you're willing to do for it, and what you think is going to be efficient, and so on and so forth. Not only do I believe that this entire approach of tanking is morally reprehensible because of the fact that you're wasting the prime careers, or the prime years of dudes' careers, you're putting their lives on the line for this nonsense. Again, we are fast on pace to be the worst team to ever exist in NFL history on both offense and defense. That can never be taken off of the history books. It'll forever be there if that ends up being the case. And so far through 4 games, it is the case. And again, there's no guarantee that any of this is going to work out in the long run. Absolutely none whatsoever. There are so many things that can derail this. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, they've already put, the derailment in motion because of, a lot of their current and past decisions, the ones that they've already made. I think they've set themselves up for the failure, ultimately. So, I mean, it's hard to say that the coaches, from my perspective, I mean, you can try and argue it if you want, but it's hard from my perspective But you know what though? Here's a test for you. In a game like the Redskins or the Jets or the Bengals, these other teams that are weak teams that are currently winless, if we in those games against weaker opponents, than the ones we faced comparatively, they're definitely stronger than our team is, definitely, and but if there are times in those games where we could have a chance to win, and then the coaching staff makes questionable decisions in those moments, like not challenging the Preston Williams potential touchdown, like deciding to take the coin toss, and there were some other ones I don't remember offhand, and start with the ball as opposed to deferring in the second half against the Patriots. Like, there was like another something that he should have challenged that he didn't or something. I don't know. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I'm just saying, if in those moments we could win and there's a failure that prevents us from, doing so, and it's because of, questionable coaching or a decision that they made, well, then you can really start to say, yeah, they don't really care about winning despite what they say, and they literally are just trying to lose everything so that way they can get that number 1 pick. But it would be even worse though if they didn't end up getting the number 1 pick and then trade up to get it. I mean, but anyway, every team enters the season with Super Bowl hopes, and while the players hit the field every Sunday with a focus on winning, the fans know it is much easier said than done. And then, let's see, the Dolphins had a pretty bare roster heading into the season, again, because of the decisions made by this front office and coaching staff, and it is clear they weren't going to have much success, again, by design. However, when fans hold signs about the next franchise quarterback or what elite players will be available when free agency rolls around, they aren't expecting the current players to come out and try to lose. Okay, so first of all, a lot of fans are wanting them to lose, which again, and we'll get more into this in a bit, but I completely disagree with. But let's look at this a little bit. About the next franchise quarterback. I mean, the next franchise quarterback, there's no guarantee. Again, far more first-round quarterbacks end up being busts or just average than they are superstars. There's potential for injury that, like, RG3, he had a superstar first season, had that knee injury, was never the same, right? So that could happen. If you don't have, a good team around the quarterback, then they are going to suffer and they are not going to, so there are so many things to say, and so many, data points, and the odds are just stacked so against, not to mention there have been Tom Brady, again, the most notable, not taken in the first round. You don't have to take a quarterback in the first round, and far more often than not, it's unsuccessful, right? Tim Tebow, right? There's that. So, there's just so many things that could go wrong, and it's a bet not worth taking. Let's see, players, or what elite players will be available when free agency rolls around. Again, they've actually made it pretty clear to this point that they intend to spend big in free agency because they have all that cap space. And the Browns did that, certainly, right? They traded for Jarvis Landry and paid him the kind of money that he wanted, even though he's not a number 1 receiver. They got OBJ. They did all these trades. They got all these, top first-round talents. And look, what are they doing right now? Struggling super hard because it's not everything. Not only that, but with the level to which the Dolphins have taken this, no players are going to want to come to Miami, dude. I can virtually guarantee that, especially if we end up at 0-16 at the end of the season. If we don't win any fucking games, if we are historically bad on offense and defense, the worst team ever to exist, none of these players are going to want to come. Tua's not going to want to come. Herbert's not going to want to come. I don't care what, how much you pay them. And then that's the thing, is that if you do convince them, you're going to have to drastically overpay them to get them to come here. And I don't want that. That is a terrible way to go about, but they have to spend in free agency, at least on one hand, because of how many holes that they've created. If they want to have a chance at being competitive, but then that's going to fucking tie their hands down their road, because then they're going to start signing all of these big, nonsensical, overly inflated contracts, because they have to if they want to have a chance at being competitive and build a team around, let's say, Tua Tagovailoa, because no matter how much draft capital they have, it's not going to be enough. Because again, you got to hit on like every single one of them. And if you don't, then what? Right? So, I mean, they're putting themselves, not to mention, no, we haven't even talked about this yet, and this is a legit possibility. After the 2020 season, there could potentially be a lockout in the NFL because of the collective bargaining agreement with the NFLPA and the NFL. If they don't reach an agreement, which they haven't yet, and all indications are that they're not close, then what do you think's going to happen then? Then a year goes by, right? Where there's no football at all. More of the young year, or the prime years of these young players' careers getting wasted. We're going to be bad next year too. This is not a single year rebuild, right? So let's continue on. As we try to battle through the rocky 2019 season, it is important to remember that fans would love to see Daniel Kilgore as a top-tier center. He's not, though. He's a solid guy. He's a decent guy. He's got success and some pedigree, but he's not going to be, you know, a generational talent or a superstar going to the Pro Bowl every year. He's not that. And cheer on a handful of undrafted rookies who may develop at the professional level. They are also aware of how hard it is to win in the NFL and the importance of elite players. As the saying goes, winning cures everything. The Dolphins won't do much of that in 2019 or 2020, but fans continue to grasp at every bright spot on this team like Preston Williams and Devon Gonshaw. Keep in mind, it is hard to not look to the 2020 draft with Miami's war chest of picks and not be excited for the future in a day when the Dolphins could potentially be viewed as one of the best teams in the league. But again, I mean, well, you know what I have to say about that. I mean, there's no guarantee of it. It's a massive, you know, gamble for no reason, whatever. But anyway, that does tie us into the next article, though. That was the end of the first article. That ties us, though, into the next one, also from Sports Illustrated. Comments from Dolphins linebacker Jerome Baker spark firestorm. And this is actually talking more to the point of the fan base and, you know, the desires to tank and to go 0-16, so on and so forth. But let's go on. So this is by a Louis Sung from Sports Illustrated, and he writes, the 2019 season isn't easy for Dolphins fans to sit through. Every week, they go to the stadium or turn on the television and expect a loss. In fact, many are actively rooting for losses. The mindset for fans on social media is that losing every game in 2020 will ensure the number one overall pick in the 2020 draft. In other words, exclusive rights to their would-be new franchise quarterback, who many are hoping will be Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa. It might also be Oregon's Justin Herbert, or it could be any one of the other guys too. But for sure, I guarantee whoever Stephen Ross is in love with, whichever quarterback it is, they are going to actively try and get that number one pick, no matter what, whether it's because they lose every single game and just get it naturally, or, you know, even if they don't and the Steelers happen to get it and we get it because of that, or whether it's because we end up with the third overall pick and we trade up to get the first overall pick. Whichever quarterback it is that Stephen Ross wants, he's going to make sure that they expend absolutely every resource possible to get him. And so that's the quarterback that we will end up taking in the first round. But controversy erupted on social media when the Miami Herald's Barry Jackson asked some players about the fans' desire for the Dolphins to lose out. Naturally, no football player who actually cares about the game would purposely try to fail. The very thought is them shaking their heads. However, Dolphins linebacker Jerome Baker questioned the fandom of those individuals rooting for losses, even in light of the greater good it would presumably bring. So real quick, again, the greater good that it would presumably bring. No guarantee whatsoever about that. But let's go into what he had to say. You're not a real fan if you're rooting for us to lose, no matter what the reason is. And that is a fact. You are not a fan of a team if you actively want them to be terrible, if you actively want them to lose. Again, I recognize that they are this way because of how the actions that were taken by the front office and the coaching staff. And I recognize that because it's logical, and when you put the pieces together, these are the results that are reaped. So I recognize that, but I don't want it to be this way. I think it's terrible. I think it sucks. I hate watching this. I love my team and I want them to be good, and I completely oppose this approach, right? So that's the proof, right? And I want it to be different. And I've, even talked about, I try and talk about ways that this regime could do things better, but I don't see them doing that, frankly. I think I see them continuing down this idiotic path. But more importantly, I talk about systemic ways that we can change this. And frankly, that's getting Stephen Ross to sell the team, because he has proven incompetent when it comes to football operations. And so he needs to sell the team, and that's how we need to start over, and then completely wipe the front office and coaching staff and let the new owner install people that he or she feels will lead this, and they should be given a fresh opportunity, right? So I talk about those things, and I want this team to be better. I don't want us to lose. I will never ever accept the approach. I mean, seriously, as a fan, really, like, it goes against everything that it means to be a fan, to be competitive, to say, yeah, man, I really want my team to lose. Like, are you serious? Like, you literally have to just be stupid to buy into that kind of thing. I mean, I'm just keeping it real. Like, how dumb do you have to be to buy into some sort of so-called process that the entire object of said process is to be bad and to fail and to lose? Like, it's just sheer stupidity. And that's why I'm like, why would you want the answer to perpetual mediocrity to be just absolute disaster and utter epic failure? That's not the answer. There is a smart way to go about it. This is not it. Right? So I completely agree with him. It is not a true fan that says, yes, I want my team to lose. Right? So again, going back to the Browns, and I actually haven't talked about this in a while, but I remember there was this video that I watched. It was on YouTube, and it was of a Browns fan, right? And this is a true Browns fan, right? They're going through their so-called tank, which to a degree, certainly, I would call it a tank, right? What they did, in their efforts, I would call it to that level, but certainly not to the level that we've taken it. But even during that, right, and I think it was during their winless 0-16 season, the Browns fan is leaving the stadium, and as he's walking through, he just starts screaming, fuck, I'm sick and tired of this shit, blah, 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 whatever, right? And I get it, man. And when I watched that video, yeah, I laughed because it was entertaining at the what's the boisterous manner in which he went about it, right? He was very loud and over the top and so on and so forth. And yes, it was kind of funny. But at the end of the day, man, I super felt for him, because while I hadn't experienced that, I had experienced mediocrity, hadn't yet experienced that, although I'm going through it now, right? Like, I felt it, man, because I understand what it means to be a fan, and you don't want to go through that as a fan. It's the worst thing. And so you're not a true fan if this is what you want for your team. You're just not. I'm sorry. Anybody who wants us to lose every game, has the desire for us to lose, and is actively like rooting for us to lose, you're not a fan. I'm sorry. You're not. You're just not. Point blank, bottom line, period, because that is the antithesis of fandom. It literally is a complete 100% contradiction, and it does not match up whatsoever. So you're not fans. If anybody who thinks that, you're not fans. Now, a real fan, because it's not just black and white, though. It's not just either you absolutely buy into everything that they do or not, right? Like, and you certainly just don't blindly follow what they say. You can criticize. It's not anti-fandom to criticize what they are doing, right? it's because again, to try not to make it political, but in the same sense as politics, right? That's ridiculous. So that's saying that if you don't agree with what your government is doing, they could be oppressing you all day, but you're just gonna take it and you're just gonna be like, okay, that's cool, otherwise I'm not patriotic. That's retarded. So it's patriotic to just endure madness and chaos and disaster, right? And oppression, right? No, it's not. Just in the same way, the same principle applies here. It's not a true fan to want this. Anyway, so let's continue on though. We try, there's more of his quote. We try to win every chance we get. If we come up short, it's not because we come up short for the future. I've seen the tanking and all that. From outside looking in, you essentially think we're just tanking, which we are, which they are. And look, Baker, he wants to believe, man, and especially because he's there, right? And he wants to believe that it's not going to be a waste, just like Xavier Howard, right? He said it in some of Baker's earlier quotes, about they can't talk to Brian Flores because they feel like their job might be on the line next or whatever, right? But Xavier Howard said, he's like, yeah, I'm worried about it. These are the young years of my career. These are the prime years of my career. I don't want to lose now. I don't want to, waste those years in this, in that kind of a mess. I don't want to risk getting injured, right? And so they do think about it, but they are still young and impressionable guys. And especially in Xavier Howard's situation, he did get paid. So, but there is a breaking point for all of them. There's going to be a breaking point for all of these guys. And if this continues, and like I said, with Xavier Howard, right now he's got a little bit of an injury thing going on. But if he has one major injury scare, that's it. And I'm telling you, he'll be bought out just like that. But we go out there and try to perform. If you're not performing, they get you out of here. Every guy wants to play well and ultimately stay as long as we can. Baker obviously tried to bring it back to the locker room with the second half of his statement, but it was too late. The damage was done. Twitter erupted with fans and analysts arguing both for and against Baker, as evidenced in this thread from 5 Reasons own Josh Houts. Jerome Baker is 22 years old. This is a tweet from Josh Houts. He's 22 years old, which means many of us have been fans longer than he's been alive. Maybe he shouldn't be the one telling us what a real fan is, just my opinion. Yeah, no. I'm gonna tell Josh Houts he can shut the fuck up and he can stop because if he wants this team to lose so they can go get Tua, who again is going to be no guarantee and could just end up getting hurt behind a porous offensive line, and then it could just all be for not anyway. Like, if that's what you want, then no, you're not a fan. So fuck you. Jerome Baker is right. It doesn't matter if he's 22 years old, if he's capable of recognizing that, because that is a logical outcome and a logical thing to come to, then fuck you. I don't give a fuck what you have to say. Like, you're stupid. It doesn't matter how long you've been a fan. There are fans that have been, I have people in the comments that have been, fans for 30 years and completely agree with this because they realize this is a terrible way to go about it. What does it mean to be a true fan? For some, it means supporting the team no matter what. See, and it's not just that black and white. It's more, again, like I said, it's more nuanced than that. It's fair to criticize them if you disagree with them, but it should be founded in facts and data, right? So and logic. So there needs to be, a solid argument and reason why, right? And so, like, I've been arguing that what they've been doing is going to produce what we produced, and I've been correct about that, right? On most occasions. There have been a couple things throughout that I've been wrong about, and I've admit to those, but for the most part, I have been correct, and the results have been borne out. And I was able to, predict or whatever, because it's logical and because the facts pointed to that direction, and then lo and behold, there you have it. So it's not that black and white, right? You don't just blindly support. You can criticize, but it does have to be founded. And if you're wrong, and you admit it and you own up to it, and then you readjust your evaluation process and you get it to the point where you can accurately and logically evaluate these things to come up with these results. and then if you disagree with the people that continue to make the choices that produce these results, it's perfectly fair and reasonable to speak up against them. Let's see. Support the player. Come on Sunday and support your team colors, rooting for a win. Support the players there now because they're giving it their all. For many others, it means demanding excellence. Do what's best for the team even if it hurts. No, that's stupid. Demand excellence, yes, but not even if it hurts, because there is a smart, logical way to go about it where it doesn't have to. Do what's best for losing now could open the door to a decade's worth of victory. That's worth the humiliation of 0-16, right? So, again, in all of these cases, everybody even says it could, potentially, blah, blah, blah. There is no guarantee. Is it worth this humiliation? No. Is it worth potentially even being the worst team to ever exist and have that stain on your record or on your history? No, it's not worth it. As a fan, I say it is not worth it. Ultimately, it depends on who you ask. Whose side are you on? And well, you guys know what side I'm on. I totally disagree with that. Anyway, let me continue on because there's some other things that I want to get to, and I'm already over 30 minutes on this video. But let's continue on though with some other things that Brian Flores had to say. So first of all, Armando Salguero tweeted out, Brian Flores says the team is wired, quote, wired to win every game. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? Like, what is that? What is that? How are they wired? Right? So let's analyze that. What the fuck does that mean? So wired. So, first of all, I find it hard to believe that they do have the entire roster bought in. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's say they do. Let's say every single dude on this roster is totally bought in, ready to go out there and put their lives on the line for potentially the worst team ever to exist, right? And for the results that they have so far put on the field, right? Let's say that. So if you wanted to say that they're wired in the sense that they're all bought in and they're all going to go out there and give it their all, which they might do for other reasons, like they want to try and put good film on tape for themselves. But let's say they do go out and perform it there and give it 100%. This team is still built to be atrociously bad. There's no talent, leadership, experience, not no talent, but we're bare in talent. It's super minimal. We are the essentially the equivalent of an expansion team. There's no, we're the youngest team in the league. Okay? So there's no experience, right? The production compared to all the players that we got rid of, the production is, drastic. It's stark, the fall off, right? So the leadership, where is the leadership on the team, right? People will point to Xavier Howard, but clearly he's frustrated with this situation. Rashad Jones, right? And they're understandably frustrated. So what does that mean? Right? Because they're certainly not wired in the talent perspective, because that you literally stripped this team of talent to its bones. So they can try as hard as they want. They can want it as much as they want. You're going to get the results that you've gotten because of how you built the team. You can't will it into fucking existence. Also, this was a tweet from Joe Shad, according to Brian, or something Brian Flores said. In addition to better execution, Brian Flores wants more energy, enthusiasm, and urgency. So that right there tells me that I'm correct, that not the entire team is bought in, because he's saying that he wants his players to play with more urgency, energy, and enthusiasm, because clearly he thinks that they are not. Well, why is it that you think the players are not playing with that level? Because I actually would agree. And I don't even think it's really their fault. I think it's just because emotions are strong, man. And when you get demoralized and when you get, beat down, and then especially when you're physically worn out, halfway through the game or whatever, you're like, man, this is not worth it. And then you start thinking about your career and, man, do I want to get myself injured? And we got a ton of guys that are injured right now. So actually, well, real quick, there's a couple statistics that I wanted to give you that I thought were interesting. First, lowest attempt percentage of 20 plus yards downfield throws among 33 qualified quarterbacks. Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick is at 23.1%, which is actually the highest, and Josh Rosen is at 17.9%, which is third highest. So that's the highest amount of attempted percentage of 20 plus yards down the field. Okay, so you might say Ryan Fitzpatrick is pushing it down the field 23.1% of the time, and Rosen 17.9% of the time. But then you look at this statistic: highest percentage of passes dropped. Dolphins, 19%. Oh, and look at this, actually, the Browns, 17% of dropped passes. Interesting. So the team that we're all looking to is an example of a tanking team that's supposedly successful. Anyway, but 19%, that's higher than the percentage that Josh Rosen pushes it downfield, and they're not all downfield passes. The drop pass percentages is on all passes, right? But anyway, so but that's higher than Josh Rosen's and not as high as Ryan Fitzpatrick's, but we already know that Fitzpatrick isn't playing anyway, so that doesn't matter. Not to mention, the offensive line and blah, blah, blah. The run game is terrible, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. So obviously those statistics, they need to be read together, right? So like, you can't just look at it and be like, oh yeah, Rosen is just pushing it downfield, he's a gunslinger. Yeah, but the receivers are dropping almost 20% of the passes thrown to them, and the offensive line has been bad, the run game has been bad. So all these things add together to show that, yeah, there's one like seemingly good statistic, but it's certainly overweighed and overshadowed by all of the other things, the stats, and other data points that are bad. But anyway, let's talk a little bit though real quick about some of the injury stuff going on. So the injury report right now, well, this is from Wednesday. Jesse Davis with an elbow was limited. Wide receiver Jakeem Grant with a hamstring, limited. Charles Harris with a wrist, full. Trent Harris with a foot, limited. Xavier Howard with a knee, limited. That's not good. Rashad Jones with an ankle, limited. Kilgore with a knee, full. Chris Lamons with a toe, limited. Bobby McCain, hamstring and a shoulder, limited. Mark Walton with an illness. It says an illness, limited. Whatever, that's not really a big deal. I'm sure he'll take a bunch of Benadryl and he'll be healthy. Albert Wilson, calf hip, limited. And Jamal Wiltz with a groin, limited. So we got a bunch of banged up guys. But Adam Beasley notes though also that there's a new ankle issue for Johnson Batamosi. Jakeem Grant not expected to play Sunday despite practicing on a limited basis. I'm telling you, man, this is, and I think that Bobby McCain's gonna end up on injured reserve at some point because of his shoulder injury. I mean, but we are pretty damn banged up right now though. And it's not good, man. It's not good. Anyway, but this tweet from Barry Jackson: 10 Dolphins were once again limited to partial practice because of injuries. Though several of those 10 Dolphins, Albert Wilson, Bobby McCain, Rashad Jones, and Jesse Davis, have said they're ready to play. Will be interesting to see how many of those 10 are held out on Sunday. So it will. So that's another thing to look at, right? So again, like Albert Wilson And Bobby McCain did say they were ready to play, but they were held out this past game. Now, you could say that it's precautionary or whatever, but if they hold him out again, it starts to build and become more evidence that this team, or that the people who are making the decisions really don't want to win. Because if you're not going to have your best players out there, even if they do have injuries, and they can scapegoat and have a excuse that, oh, well, they're injured and we just don't want to injure them further, and that's an acceptable one. But at the same time, if the players are saying that they're ready and they want to be out on the field and they want to help this team win, and you don't put them out there. Now, in Bobby McCain's case, again, I think that injury ultimately could put him on injured reserve. So, I think it might be smart not to play him. But Albert Wilson says he's ready. Jesse Davis, Rashad Jones, they say they're ready. So, if you don't play them and they're your best players, not to mention Xavier Howard's got a knee issue right now. I'm telling you, man, that relationship with him and the Dolphins is super fragile, especially if we continue losing and stuff. I mean, so unfortunately, man, I see a lot of more potential disaster. Now, let's see how things go, though, in this upcoming game against the Redskins, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit, because there's one more article that I want to read. Dolphins makeshift offensive line faces imposing test. This is from Dolphins Wire. Let's see, and it's Kyle Krabs. Dolphins makeshift offensive line faces imposing test versus Washington. In many phases of this weekend's football game against the Washington Redskins, the Miami Dolphins will face their most advantageous matchup of the year. Most advantageous, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is an advantage for us. It's just the most advantageous. In other words, we are clearly, he's not saying this, I'm saying this, we are clearly by far, and the statistics bear this out, we are by far the worst team in the league, and this is just the weakest team that we're going to play compared to out of all the teams that we've played so far. Let's see. There is no Tom Brady or Phillip Rivers in the pocket to dice up the Dolphins secondary. That's true. No athletic threat under center like Dak Prescott or Lamar Jackson either. That's true. Unless they play Dwayne Haskins, but they've said that they're going to play Case Keenum. So, true. If that holds. The Washington offense is pretty punchless, much like the Dolphins have been to this point in the season, which is true. But there's one area of the Washington roster that is poised to give the Dolphins fits on Sunday. The Redskins defensive line. Now, if this is true, then yes, the Redskins might be a bad team and might not be very good on offense, and our defense might be able to, hold them in check for even the majority of the game. But if their offense is even a little bit better than ours, and then they should be able to score more points than us and win the game. And again, it could end up being a relatively close game, certainly a lot closer than the ones we've seen. But I still do think, and I don't think that we're going to get blown out, but I still do think it is possible that we end up losing by, at least a touchdown or, 10 points or more. But anyway, Washington's defensive front seven is filled with explosive hands, heavy anchors, and quick first steps. Whether that be Deron Payne or John Allen, a pair of Alabama Crimson Tide first-round picks, or longtime veteran Ryan Kerrigan coming off the edge, the Washington pass rush has the potential to bully the Dolphins up front. Now, I haven't looked at their league standings yet, but I'm pretty sure with the way our run game is going, unless they drastically improve, they stand a damn good chance of shutting down our run game, making us one-dimensional, and then getting some pass rush and harassing Josh Rosen. So we'll see. Well, let's continue on with this. If they do, the Dolphins' offensive struggles will extend to another week. It's difficult to see quarterback Josh Rosen thriving under consistent interior pressure from the front three of Allen, Payne, and Matt Ioannidis. All are really good players, and he's right. Their front seven is, and can certainly be pretty fierce, especially if they are going to be coming up, playing against the worst line in the league. We have the worst offensive line in the league. And so, Dolphins fans, hungry for a win, there's your critical matchup. Michael Dieter, Daniel Kilgore, and Evan Boehm must play a cohesive effort up front to keep gaps clean. We actually don't even know, though, if, we don't know if Jesse Davis is going to play, although he wasn't mentioned there. But yeah, those guys got to play well. But they must also show up in a big way with their individual anchors. Uneven levels on the interior is a first-class ticket to gap penetration and quarterback pressure. It will be no easy task, but the Dolphins' hopes of winning this Sunday fall heavily onto the shoulders of Miami's biggest weakness this decade, the interior offensive line. Not just this decade, but again, it was made even weaker by this organization in this front office coming into this season, right? And so actually, as a matter of fact, let's talk about a little bit. Garrett Bradbury, the center that I would have taken, is struggling a bit in Minnesota, but he's a rookie, and it also depends on the players around him. Now, if the Dolphins, let's say, would have gone into this season with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, if they would have found a way to keep Jawan James at right tackle, Garrett Bradbury in the center with Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback, and then Will Grier as the backup, the young buck that you could have taken in the third round, right? And then Jesse Davis at like right guard where he's played this entire time, and then maybe another young player that you drafted in, that you could have drafted or whatever, plays at left guard, then or even Josh Sitton, although to be fair, he did retire, but if they would have tried to keep him around and if he would have played, right? So you could have had a pretty damn good offensive line for the young kid to come up and to be able to learn from and to help anchor him and to even help cover for some of his mistakes, or the learning curve, to help lessen the learning curve, right? I don't know the other guys on the Minnesota offensive line, so I can't speak to that, but I'm simply talking about if he was in an environment where, he has that. But to be fair, he is having some struggles again, but that just goes to show you too that, all players, when they come in, it doesn't matter if you're a first round pick, whatever, you have to adjust to the NFL, and why that makes what the Dolphins are doing such a gamble. Because they have to rely on the fact that not only do they have to get it right with their scouting department and then make the right picks at the right positions at the right times, but then they got to pan out. They got to not get injured. They got to perform well. They got to adjust well to the NFL. All these things and all these factors is why it could fail are going to be why it does fail, in my opinion, in my perspective. So anyway, that about does it though. And, look, I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot to look at going into this upcoming game, right? So, also, Allen Hurns was taken out of the concussion protocol, I do believe, and I think I saw a tweet about that from one of the Dolphins beat writers or something like that. So I believe Allen Hurns is out of the concussion protocol and should be ready to play. But anyway, but we'll see. We have a ton of guys that are banged up. We'll see which guys they decide to make, inactive. That will be telling. The lineup, we'll see how the offensive line, lines up. Who's on the offensive line? Because again, there could be the fifth, offensive line pairing that we've seen this season. That'll be interesting to see. The play calling and the situational, decisions that are made, and how players are utilized, that'll be interesting to see. There's a lot, and then how they perform, right? So there's a lot that we're going the offensive line versus their defensive line, there's going to be a lot going into this game that we're going to be looking at. And, I'm always going to be excited for Dolphins football, but it is going to be obviously super disappointing, if we lose again, and especially if we have, another bad performance, and if it's a performance that keeps us on pace to being the worst team to ever exist. I mean, that's super depressing, but we'll see, man. I mean, they have an opportunity. It's certainly the best one that they've had to this point. It is certainly the weakest opponent that they've come up against. So let's see what decisions they make on game day. Let's see who they decide to have active and inactive, and how they decide to call the game, and so on and so forth. Because a lot of that stuff will be telling into their true intentions, right? Are they, again, do they actually have a legit chance to beat the Redskins on Sunday? And then, through some really super questionable decision made by the coaching staff or whatever, does that put us, does that make us lose the game or whatever, right? So all of those kinds of things we'll be looking at. And to help us develop and continue our evaluation of this team and this organization and what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So that's all I got for you guys today. I know it's a lot. This video is going on almost about an hour, so I'm gonna get up out of here. But look, if you guys like, my perspective and the things that I gotta say, again, I try and just make sure that I give you guys all the facts and all the data, and then the best and most accurate perspective and evaluation that I can based off of that, and then obviously applying logic and reason to those facts. So I hope you guys like it. If you do, and if you like my perspective and enjoy the perspective that I have for you, then please make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comments section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.